And Barbara, stand by with us for just a moment. That press conference is now taking place, and we're going to go ahead and listen in.
These were young men who committed these crimes. It is our understanding that the hearing will determine if they should be released. The parents, upon Audrie's suicide, were devastated and searching for answers. Based on rumors, some of Audrie's friends came forward, and after a review of Audrie's own Facebook, the parents suspected that Audrey had been violated in a terrible way, and that at least one photograph of a sexual assault in which she was a victim was passed around electronically to humiliate her. So they hired my firm to get to the bottom of this and to get some answers. And the first thing we did was hire the very best. And we've conducted a diligent, exhaustive investigation, and we have some answers. Based upon the investigation we have conducted, sadly, not only did these despicable things happen, but we believe that Audrey decided to end her life as a result of what these young men did. We now know that during the Labor Day weekend of 2012, Audrey attended a party at a friend's house while her friend's parents were away. After consuming alcohol at the party, Audrey became intoxicated and unconscious. She went to a bed to go to sleep, hoping to wake up the next day and go to school and start the school year. Instead, she woke up to an absolute nightmare. She knew right away that something was terribly wrong. This is the beginning of the horrible events that occurred, and then she learned that at least one photograph was taken of her. Those involved distributed at least one photograph in person and via text messages to other students at Saratoga High School. In Audrey's own words, the whole school knows. It's important to focus on what Audrey was thinking. These are her words. The whole school knew. Whether 10 students had looked at this photograph or whether it was one. Whatever it was that much too many. If 10 students saw this photograph, where were those students in coming forward and talking to these parents? How many more knew about it? We know how kids talk. If we know 10 students saw the photograph, how many more talked about it? What we do know is what Audrey was thinking. And what she was thinking is that the whole school knew, and she felt that her life was ruined as a result of the distribution of her being violated. At a time when Audrey should have been thinking about who her next date was going to be at the next school dance, she was dealing with something as a 15-year-old that hardly any of us are capable of dealing with. The sexual assault was one thing. When it's committed by 3 people who you knew, these were friends, and then to be publicly humiliated and disgraced in front of her whole student body, that was too much for this young girl to take. In Audrey's Facebook messages, we find writings of a young girl who felt traumatized, humiliated, and shamed by what they had done to her. Lisa, her stepmother, will speak to those Facebook messages. Audrey, in her own words, names two of the young men by name. And she recognizes what they did to her. And she says, as a result of what these young men did to her, my life is ruined now. On the day of the tragedy, Audrey called her mother to ask her to come pick her up at school. And in her own words, I can't do this anymore, Mom. Please pick me up. Audrey's mom, Sheila, picked her up, and when they got home, a tragedy occurred. There is more to this story, and the parents deserve the answers. Students at the school knew what happened. We now know today that at least 10 students saw this photograph. Where were they? I am urging parents, we as a group, are urging parents to have a discussion with your children. If there is any information you know about this horrible event and the aftermath of the distribution of not only a photograph, but defamatory words about Audrie, please come forward. Talk to these decorated police officers. Our job is to find out the truth. It's important to note that this family has been waiting for 7 months to hear from the families of one of these 3 young men. 7 months, that's over 200 days, and they have passed by very slowly. The first word we heard from any of these 3 young men's families was through a group of lawyers, 3 of them, criminal defense lawyers, who issued a public statement. Silly us, maybe we thought that they would get some condolences. I'm sorry, Mrs. Pott, about your daughter. My son did something horrible. I wish to make amends. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Pott. What happened was inexcusable. We will not tolerate that again. We will make sure it doesn't happen again. But instead, what we got from this camp of lawyers were 2 statements. Number one, that what we're talking about is inaccurate. And I'll let the parents talk about what's accurate and what's not. And number 2, and I have to quote this because it's worth quoting. And this is a quote from the criminal defense lawyers camp. Quote, most disturbing, they say, is the attempt to link Audrie's suicide to the specific actions of these 3 boys, end quote. They will apparently have you all believe that what they did and what Audrie did have nothing to do with each other. That it's just a sheer coincidence that Audrie was subjected to a sexual assault and over the next 7 days was humiliated. And then she decides to do this to herself, but there is no cause and effect whatsoever. Frankly, this sent us over the edge because it tells us that these boys and perhaps their families to this day refuse to accept responsibility. And that's what the court system is for when people who refuse to admit that they're wrong, then we'll use the civil justice system to prove that they're wrong. And that's exactly what we intend to do. Today, in Santa Clara County Superior Court, we will be filing a wrongful death cause of action against these 3 young men, and we intend to prove in a court of law that their actions, not only for the sexual assault, but what they did afterwards, the despicable, horrific, traumatic, defaming, and savage actions they did in the next 7 days, broke her. She couldn't handle it. And she did the worst thing a parent can ever imagine, is that she ended her life. The parents of this county, across the state, across this country, deserve a safe community for children. While we cannot bring Audrie back, it is the family's goal that the community is made safer by holding these young men accountable, by sending a message that the behavior that left Audrie feeling hopeless and alone will not be tolerated. Serious consequences must be attached to this kind of behavior. Our children deserve to grow up in a safe community. Let me end in stating this. We hope that our message is clear. To do honor to Audrie's name, we must make this world a better place by addressing the dangers of cyberbullying, sexual assault amongst teens, and the harassment that happens to teenagers. Talk to your children. Let's educate. Let's legislate. Let's get our politicians involved and use Audrie's name to make it better for children. Thank you. And at this point in time, I will have Mrs. Sheila Pott say a few words.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Pott. I am Audrie's mother. First, I would like to thank all of those around the world who have expressed their love for Audrie and the sadness we have all shared that she was driven to leave us in the way that she did. Audrie was a joy to everyone that she was around. She warmed the room with her smile and made us laugh with her incredible wit and sense of humor. Audrie had a kind and gentle heart that from a very young age she formed relationships not only with her friends but adults of all ages. She had a quality for bringing joy and laughter to all those that she was around. There is not a day or an hour that passes that I'm not warmed by a memory of her. In the days and months that followed the investigation, I learned that there was a serious flaw in the laws that surrounded the assault on my daughter. I discovered that if a victim does not have the ability to protest to a sexual assault, it is seen as a lesser crime than if she was conscious and able to fight off her attacker. I also learned that in California, a sexual assault strikingly similar to that of Steubenville, Ohio case was not considered rape and therefore could not be escalated to an adult court. Needless to say, I was outraged. It seemed that the system was not designed to protect those who could not protect themselves. To make matters worse, since we are now limited to the penalties present in the juvenile system, my daughter's attackers may never have to serve time, never have to register as sex offenders, and since a juvenile's identity is protected, there would never be any future impact on these boys' lives. My immediate thought was, if there was no public impact in their lives, how could this ever be a deterrent? No wonder this type of crime is growing in frequency. The further impact of social media being used to bully the victim makes it just that much worse. These types of crimes are not juvenile. Sexual assault is an adult crime. These boys distributed the pictures to humiliate and further bully my daughter. If this can happen to my daughter, it can happen to anyone. These boys were not strangers to Audrie. They were her friends. This breach of trust would be difficult for an adult to handle, let alone a young girl. These individuals calculated their assault, harassed the victim with the photos, and then took steps to cover up the evidence. There was no remorse here. These were not the actions of a child, but of a person whose value systems were so skewed that they will do this again. I want to take serious steps to see that this doesn't happen to another one of our children. Audrie's law is still in the research phase. I want to thank you all for allowing us to tell her story and to attempt to make changes that will make our communities and schools once again safe. Thank you.
The mother there of Audrie Pott talking to reporters in Northern California. Let's bring in our expert, Barbara Greenberg, just for one last question before we go. Barbara, it's very clear, and you hear this from the attorney and also from the mother of Audrie Pott, her distress became so much greater following the alleged sexual assault because she found out there were pictures, and we've seen other cases like this. Why did this, what is the effect of that on a victim?
She expected, I am quite sure, that her friends and her peers would give her support after this atrocity happened to her. And instead of support, she got further humiliation. And I think the combination of what happened to her, the assault, plus the lack of support and further humiliation was just too much for her to handle, be too much for anybody to handle. And even her teenage female friends were unable to support her, likely because they wanted to remain popular with the boys and didn't want to lower their social status. Very sad. And I think as a society, we need to do a lot of repair work here. We as parents need to teach their kids to be responsible for one another, and as psychologists, we need to educate parents.
And that's something that we heard from the family there. They don't want this to happen to other girls, and they're trying to raise awareness. Barbara Greenberg, thank you so much for talking to us about this terrible incident. Now, tonight, Audrie Pott's parents will speak live with Piers Morgan right here on CNN at 9 p.m. Eastern. And up next, while North Korea celebrates, the world watches for the communist nation to make a move. Up next, a live report from the region on whether the country's closer to launching a missile. Plus, I'm just getting word gold has plunged 9% as the Dow tanks in these last couple hours of trading. The reasons behind it next.